It was called Freeman's Folly, a British bomber made of wood, built by furniture makers, with no guns to defend itself. Berlin's leaders laughed, the Luftwaffe shrugged, until Germany's air defences were humiliated time after time by an aircraft that hit harder and vanished faster than anything made of steel. Hermann Göring raged. "I turn green with envy." The Mosquito, the wooden bomber Germany couldn't stop, shattered Nazi broadcasts, exposed cracks in the Reich's armour, and forced its enemies to admit defeat. How did a gamble on wood become the Allies' deadliest edge? And why couldn't Germany stop it? The answer starts with a decision that nearly cost one man his career. Sir Wilfred Freeman sat across from the Air Ministry Board, facing a wall of scepticism. The memo on the table called his proposal a waste of resources. A bomber built from birch, balsa and spruce, with no defensive guns, and powered by 2 Merlin engines. One official scoffed, "Wood belongs in pianos, not in aircraft." Yet Freeman refused to back down. He threatened resignation in a letter dated February 1904, writing, "Better ridiculed for trying than disgraced for timidity." While the Air Ministry clung to tradition, Freeman saw an opportunity. With aluminium rationed and factories bombed, civilian workshops became a secret weapon. More than 100 furniture makers, piano factories, and cabinet shops across Britain were quietly enlisted. In Liverpool, a cabinet maker shaped wing ribs by hand. In High Wycombe, piano craftsmen glued fuselage shells in assembly lines that ran day and night. Each piece fit together with a precision that rivaled military production. The Mosquito's skeleton was built not by arms dealers, but by families who had never set foot in an airfield. Freeman's gamble was personal. He bypassed committee roadblocks, phoned Geoffrey de Havilland directly, and pushed through the first orders with his own authority. If the Mosquito failed, Freeman's career would end in disgrace. If it succeeded, a plywood ghost would haunt the Reich. Against the odds, Britain's war machine turned to wooden glue, betting everything on speed and surprise. The prototype rolled out onto the Hatfield runway in November 1940, its pale wooden skin gleaming under a thin winter sun. Inside the cockpit, test pilot Geoffrey de Havilland Jr. checked the twin Merlin engines, each one tuned by a team of mechanics who had spent weeks squeezing out every ounce of power. The control tower cleared him for takeoff. The Mosquito surged forward, lifting off with a lightness that felt almost unnatural for a bomber. Within minutes, the chase plane, a Spitfire, pride of the RAF, was left trailing in its wake. De Havilland opened the throttle. Airspeed needles climbed, 360, 380, then 392 miles per hour. The official trial report logged the numbers. The Spitfire, celebrated for its speed, couldn't keep up. Back at the airfield, engineers and observers gathered around the data sheets. The numbers didn't lie. A plywood bomber had just outpaced every fighter in British service. The chase film, developed that afternoon, showed the Mosquito pulling away, a streak of pale wood against the horizon. Word spread quickly. In Berlin, a Luftwaffe attaché received a coded message. The British had flown a new type, unbewaffnet, aber außergewöhnlich schnell, unarmed but extraordinarily fast. German analysts dismissed it as an error, a trick of British propaganda, but the evidence was undeniable. A plane built in furniture factories had just set a speed record that steel and aluminum couldn't match. The Mosquito's first flight wasn't just a technical triumph, it was a warning shot the enemy failed to hear. At 10:58 a.m. on January 30th, 1943, Berlin's air raid sirens wailed as 3 Mosquitoes from No. 105 Squadron approached the city at rooftop height. The timing was no accident. Inside the Haus des Rundfunks, Nazi officials crowded around microphones, waiting to broadcast Göring's anniversary speech live to the nation. British planners had set their watches to the second. The first bombs fell just as the announcer began his introduction, shattering windows and scattering technicians. The broadcast hall was evacuated, technical gear smashed, and marching music piped in as a cover. Listeners across Germany heard silence, then the distant rumble of explosions, then a sudden switch to filler tunes. Göring's speech would not resume for another 63 minutes. Flak Regiment 12 opened fire with every available battery, but the Mosquitoes were already gone, escaping northwest at a speed the gunners called extraordinarily high. Luftwaffe radar logs registered targets moving too fast to track for more than a minute. A frustrated entry in the operations log reads, "No enemy planes downed." Berlin's defenders scrambled for explanations. Diary entries from flak officers described the attack as frantic but fruitless, with one noting, "By the time our barrage began, the English ghosts were already gone." In the pilot's mess, morale sagged. "No chance of intercepting, too fast, too high," wrote one fighter pilot. The propaganda ministry's own incident report admitted the truth. The broadcast of Göring's speech had to be interrupted due to a bombing attack. For 1 hour, the Reich's capital waited, humbled by 3 wooden bombers built in British furniture shops. On the morning of February 18th, 1944, 19 Mosquitoes of 140 wing skimmed the channel, engines throttled down, wingtips barely clearing hedgerows. Their objective, Amiens prison, where over 800 men and women, resistance fighters, political prisoners, and common criminals waited behind stone walls. The order was simple and brutal. Breach the walls, destroy the guards' quarters, and give the condemned a fighting chance to escape before the noon executions. Pickard led the first wave, his aircraft EG-F banking hard into the final approach. Navigators called out seconds. At precisely 12 noon, the first bomb struck, tearing open the eastern wall. Debris and dust filled the air as prisoners staggered from shattered cells. French eyewitnesses described the ground shaking, doors torn from hinges, guards scrambling for cover. Within minutes, a second wave dropped delayed fuse bombs on the barracks, collapsing rooftops and sending survivors rushing for the gaps. German flak erupted. Pickard's Mosquito, pulling up through a curtain of fire, took a direct hit. Smoke trailed from the tail as he called out a last message, "I'm going in," before the aircraft crashed west of the target. 2 Typhoons and another Mosquito were lost in the chaos. Prisoners poured into the snow, some guided by resistance contacts, others hunted down in the fields. Official logs counted 255 escapes, though most were recaptured within days. For a handful, the breach meant freedom. For Pickard and his crew, it was the last flight. The raid's precision, daring, and sacrifice turned a wooden bomber into legend, and left the enemy reeling from a blow they never saw coming. Over 40 distinct variants, each tailored for a specific mission, sprang from the Mosquito's wooden frame. Bomber crews flew deep into enemy territory, relying on speed and altitude to outpace interception. Pathfinder teams, equipped with H-2S radar, marked targets for heavy bombers with a precision that transformed night raids. High-altitude photo reconnaissance pilots climbed to 37,000 feet, gathering intelligence at speeds above 420 miles per hour, far beyond the reach of most Luftwaffe fighters. Night fighter squadrons, outfitted with onboard radar, hunted German bombers and V-1 rockets in the darkness over London. In every role, bomber, scout, night hunter, or pathfinder, the Mosquito's adaptability gave the RAF an edge. The same airframe, built by piano makers and cabinet shops, became the most versatile weapon in Britain's aerial arsenal. Heinz Wolfgang Schnaufer, the Luftwaffe's most successful night fighter ace, called the Mosquito a ghost bomber, a machine that appeared out of nowhere, struck with precision, and vanished before any fighter could react. In his post-war interviews, Schnaufer described endless frustration. No defence existed except blind luck. German night fighter crews echoed the sentiment in their diaries, writing of spectre bombers that haunted the skies and left even elite pilots feeling powerless. The Reich's answer, the Tu-154, never matched its adversary. Rushed into service, it suffered catastrophic failures when substitute adhesives caused wings to shear off in flight. Technical memos from the Reich Air Ministry blamed glue shortages and sabotage, but the outcome was clear. The Mosquito flew faster, higher, and with more reliability than any German copy. For many in the Luftwaffe, respect came grudgingly, etched in after-action reports and the silence that followed every failed interception. On January 30th, 1943, Mosquito bombers forced a 63-minute delay in Berlin's radio broadcast, an event documented in German propaganda ministry, memos, and Luftwaffe logs. Across more than 40 variants, the Mosquito outpaced, outmaneuvered, and outlasted its rivals. German diaries and official reports reveal both frustration and admiration. Cabinet makers' woodwork had outflown steel and firepower. Yet not all records are open. Some wartime intelligence files and details of German countermeasures remain classified. Historians agree the Mosquito's blend of speed, agility, and versatility changed Allied air strategy and undermined enemy morale. Today, its legacy is clear. The Mosquito proved that innovation and unconventional thinking could alter the course of war. To Britain, it became the wooden wonder. To the Luftwaffe, it was the bomber they could not stop.